Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Chili Wolfpack Podcast, Talk About It Tuesday edition. I'm your host, Ian Wolf, and we're back at it with another episode from our handy dandy, yours truly, Every Thought Captive by Pastor Kyle Idleman. And the discussion for today is how strongholds are destroyed. So first, let's go to our verse of the day from Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 in the GNT version. It states, "Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts." Let me reread that. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. You are what you think. You think what you consume. We've been talking about this week after week. We're beginning to see patterns of this. So, how are strongholds destroyed? First off, what is a stronghold? A stronghold is a deception of lies. And the deception of lies is guarded by fear and pride. Now, it's not enough to change your behavior and your habits, because one of two things will happen if you just try to change the behavior or the habit. Now, first, what do I mean by that? Let's get practical here. So, let's just get into it this way. If you just go after changing your behavior or your habits without tackling the stronghold, A, they will come back. Your old habits, your old behavior will come back. Or B, one self-destructive habit gets swapped for another. So I'll give you a personal example here. Years ago, younger me, not walking with the Lord me, I used to smoke a lot of marijuana. And it was getting to the point where I didn't want to smoke as much. So I told myself, I'm not going to smoke on the weekends. But what I ended up doing was I started drinking on the weekends. So I just swapped one bad habit for another. And for those of you that smoke or drink, hey, no judgment on my end. I'm just letting you know. I was smoking too much, but I decided I'm just going to swap the smoking for the drinking. But what I wasn't doing was being sober-minded like the Bible calls us to do. So I was just swapping one for another. Another thing we see sometimes is people just try to quit cold turkey, but they really haven't changed what's on the inside, that driving force that is ultimately what gets them to make these types of choices, right? So let's take someone with anger management. This is another example. Someone who has anger issues, he or she gets ticked off real easily, whatever. They have triggers in place, and maybe they go to some meetings or whatever. They're just being more cognizant of not getting so angry, not getting so fired up when things that try to make them angry occur. And for a while, they're doing good. They're breathing, they're doing their deep breaths, they're repeating their power phrases to themselves or whatever their counselor taught them. But eventually that bad habit could come right back if they haven't tackled some of the root causes. Well, let's ask ourselves this question. Why did they get angry so much in the first place? Well, if we go back to their childhood, this happened and that happened, okay? Maybe they have severe trust issues, or they saw mom or dad with anger issues, or they grew up in a certain environment. I mean, we could list hundreds of potential factors. You're following me, but things happened in their childhood. Things have happened throughout their lives that have ultimately molded them into having this type of tick. But if they haven't recovered from that type and overcame that type of trauma, well, then eventually that's going to rear its ugly head because it hasn't truly been dealt with. So if you have a garden, and your garden, maybe it's a flower bed, or it's you got tomatoes and peppers and lettuce, whatever, and you have weeds. Well, if you just go to visualize this notebook as the surface of the dirt. This is the surface. You have, let's just say I have a nice pretty pink flower growing. This is a flower, and then I got some weeds. If I take a pair of scissors and I just chop the weed right at the surface, great. I don't see a weed, but eventually that weed is going to grow right back up in a few days. But if I dig beneath the surface and I pull the weed out by its roots, now that weed is officially removed versus just snipping it off at the surface and then a little bit of sunshine or rain and it comes right back. So now let's really get into more, okay, how are strongholds actually destroyed? Again, I'll remind you, a stronghold is a deception of lies, and it's guarded by fear and by pride. So if we look to Proverbs chapter 21, verse 22, NIV version, it states, "One who is wise can go up against the city of the mighty and pull down the stronghold in which they trust." One who is wise goes up against the city of the mighty, and it can pull down the stronghold, or it pulls down the deception of lies in which they trust. So it pulls down the lies in which all these people trust. These people trusting lies. One who is wise, though, can conquer those lies. But how do you do that? What is this? Okay, Ian, what are you saying right now? Leaders are hiding in this stronghold. So if you attack the city but don't take the stronghold, that city reestablishes. And what I mean by that is, if in no way am I implying to go conquer a city, right? But if you go try to conquer a city or a piece of land and you take out a large number of the civilians and you plunder a lot of what that territory has to offer, but you don't take out the leaders, you don't take out the governing body, the people who have the brain, the people who have the agenda and the ideology, the government, if you will, if you don't overthrow that, well, then eventually, okay, you could take out a majority of their civilians, but if they're still standing, their ideas are still standing, well, then it's just going to reestablish. Bing, bing, bang. It's going to reestablish. So if you want to take down that stronghold of lies, you have to conquer the stronghold, the leaders, the roots, if you will. Those weeds, you can't snip it at the surface. You have to take the weeds. Snipping the weeds at the surface of the dirt is like taking out the civilians. But if you want to take out the stronghold, then you have to dig underneath. You have to dig into the dirt, pull it out by its roots. So that is what would we call that? Personification. Shout out to my English teachers that I've had. So I hope that was a good visual for you guys. And to tie this back to the mind, same thing. So in this example, the civilians would be like our behavior and our habits. You can try to change your behavior and habits, but if you don't take out the root cause of your behavior, if you don't investigate that and change the root cause, and these things could go back to early childhood, well, then eventually the same things are going to reemerge over and over again. So we see this a lot around the new year. People are making New Year's resolutions. All kinds of New Year resolutions are made around the new year. And a common one is going to the gym, getting a gym membership. You know, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to gain muscle. I'm going to get my body right. I want that good physique. I want to feel better, look better, be more confident. But a lot of those people, and shout out to those who don't, shout out to those who keep going and they're consistent and they've formed lifelong habits for the better and they're healthier, happier, more confident. But for those that go for a few months and then they start to fade out, they start to, okay, wait, crescendo is up, right? So what's the, I'm not a musically literate person anyways, but those who start to fade out or flicker away over time, they try to change their behavior and their habits by, hey, you know, I'm going to spend part of my day going to the gym. Instead, I'm going to change my behavior. I'm changing the actions that I'm doing, but why weren't you going to the gym in the first place? So what was the driving cause in your mind in the first place of choosing not to go to the gym? And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with you if you don't work out. Guys, stick with me. I'm just trying to pull from practical examples that you or someone you might know, might be going through. So yeah, this is deep, and I'm again going to be completely honest with you. I don't hold all the answers to this. I'm walking this out just as you guys are. I'm trying to learn new concepts with you guys. I'm also trying to learn how to more effectively explain these concepts as well. We're walking in this together. So let's move on to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. It goes, "For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." There's that word again. "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." Man, taking thoughts captive, taking lies captive, it's biblical. It's not just a book, it's biblical. The greatest book of all time. This is a darn good book, but the greatest book of all time, the Holy Gospel, is biblical. Taking lies captive, taking the evil one's thoughts captive, because not every thought that you have is from God. And it's okay. Look, I feel so guilty and shameful at times with some of the thoughts that come into my mind. I didn't invite those thoughts, but they're just there. Now I have to deal with them. And sometimes it's easier said than done. I feel so guilty, but it's normal. It's okay, guys. Like, and I'm talking to myself too as much as I'm talking to you. It's okay if you struggle with intrusive thoughts at times. I don't want you to beat yourself up over it, because quite honestly, I do that sometimes, and it sucks. But how do we find that balance? Because you still need to hold yourself accountable and still strive to move further towards Christ and further away from the evil one and those thoughts that are being implanted in your mind. Human arguments and reasoning that oppose the truth of God, they need to be captured and destroyed. Yes. So there you have it. We talked about how to destroy strongholds. We incorporated 3 different verses from Proverbs 4, chapter 23, Proverbs 21, verse 22, and 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5. Be sure to check those out, save them, meditate on them if the Lord is calling you to do so. We talked about we need to do more than just change our behavior and habits. We need to ultimately take down the stronghold. We can't just snip the weed at the surface. We have to dig, dive deep, pull it out by the roots. This is very deep. It's easier said than done, guys. That's where wise counsel comes into play. None of us can do this on our own. I want to preface this right now. Not one of us can do it alone. Not one of us can take down the evil one on our own. Not one of us can take every single bad thought captive on our own. Not everyone can go through this fight and go through this walk of life and be successful on our own. We need people around us. So, thank you guys for listening, and can't wait to see you tomorrow for Worship Wednesday and next Tuesday as well for another episode of Talk About It Tuesday. If you're inspired by this podcast, be sure to hit that follow button at the top of the page on Spotify and hit the bell so you don't miss a single episode every Tuesday and Wednesday. And thank you guys for supporting. God bless.